New chapter for TNT. We're red, ready, and responsible. Vote PNM. Great is the PNM.
Calling on the Red Army. Trinidad and Tobago.
After the lineup of speakers tonight, setting the pathway for the conversation I would like to have with you, you would now allow me to have a conversation with you that is a necessary one. And I want to start off with something that just came to me. Because you've heard for the last 9.5 years that when you are Prime Minister, you get certain information. When you are the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, you get information as well as the Chairman of the National Security Council. So you would have heard Minister Cummings a short while ago warn Trinidad and Tobago about the use by the UNC and the UNC agents of certain bots and intentional misinformation on the internet. So last night, after midnight, as the Prime Minister, I had a series of people sending me a video, and I'm sure many of you in this crowd would have seen it. There was a video of rapid gunfire, as though it was a war zone, and people were telling us that was Tunapuna. Did you all see the video? Immediately, I got on to the Minister of National Security after midnight last night, and I asked that that be investigated. I asked that this is a serious, serious matter, because of the type of gunfire I was hearing, as many of you heard, and the fact that it was being suggested that it is Tunapuna. Because you see, we all knew that the PNM was coming here tonight for this meeting. At 9:36 p.m. tonight, as the Chairman of the National Security Council, I received a report on the investigation into that video. And this is a warning, Trinidad and Tobago, as to the type of tactics and the way that the UNC and its operators are trying to influence wrongly Trinidad and Tobago. I can now say, without fear of contradiction, our services having investigated and the cyber unit having investigated that video, that the video is fake and made by a video game. The video is fake and made by a video game. And that takes me to another point. Because I want to warn all of the civic-minded, sober citizens who want to build a better Trinidad and Tobago that my colleague from the inner bar, Senior Counsel Larry Lala, spoke about. Because you see, on the 28th of April, Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very critical decision to make. On the 28th of April, we have to decide who is going to govern Trinidad and Tobago. We have to decide, do you want a responsible, a sober, a sane government who has the ability, who has the credibility, who has the reputation to do what is right for Trinidad and Tobago? Or are you going to choose a person and a party who has a track record of continuously attacking Trinidad and Tobago, who has a proven track record of a continuous attempt to mislead the population, continuously putting misinformation into the public domain. And that is part of the decision we have to make. We have to be very, very careful that you don't allow the fake videos and the fake information that one party is putting out there influence our minds. Because you see, I spoke in San Fernando the other night, and you remember the conversation I had because it was an important one. I was warning Trinidad and Tobago that when we study the plans of the UNC and the promises being made and the bag of poison that I referred to, it could only happen in one way: the destruction of Trinidad and Tobago. And I listened very carefully, like I'm sure many of you did. And I waited to see how the UNC would respond to that. And for the next 24 hours, because I used a video of the leader of the UNC as well as the UNC's plan to prove the point I was making about devaluation. For the next 24 plus hours, it was pure silence. They could not respond. But what they did was they produced a video of me standing saying that I would get rid of CPEP, I would get rid of URP, I would get rid of this, and I'd get rid of that, which you all know was a lie. Because that is the way that that irresponsible, dishonest, thieving party operates. You would also recall, you have a comparison of attending one of our religious festivals in Trinidad and Tobago, which is one of the most important religious occasions for Muslim brothers and sisters, Eid. So a couple weekends ago, as the Prime Minister, representing everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, being very conscious that a Prime Minister should integrate him or herself with every religious organization in Trinidad and Tobago to show respect, I attended, as I've done for the last 4 years, a mosque in South Trinidad and participated at the request of the Muslim clerics in something called zakat and handing out, as you do, contributions to those who have less and those who are more vulnerable in society. And if you look at the proper video of it, you will see me very respectfully actually thanking people, having conversations with people in a sober manner, respecting the Islamic religion. Within minutes, a frontline member of the UNC, a frontline member who is a Muslim in the UNC, produced a doctored video trying to sell a narrative to Trinidad and Tobago that I was doing zakat and paying for votes. And you know what was the most disturbing part about that? That certain elements, unfortunately in the media, quickly grabbed hold of that story and came at me with it. But what it was funny is it was their video that Saddam Hussein used to doctor and to block out the conversation that the young mother was having with me. I start my presentation tonight, Trinidad and Tobago, warning you of the dangers and giving you 3 live examples that are irrefutable about the behavior of those who are trying to fool Trinidad and Tobago to lead us to destruction. Let us get back to the comparison. We have worked relentlessly without rest to stabilize Trinidad and Tobago over the last 9.5 years. We have sought to attract foreign investment to Trinidad and Tobago. And I want the population tonight to be reminded at what those who are now asking you to give them your vote did. As we were trying to get someone with the wherewithal, the ability to restart the refinery, because the state cannot run the refinery. The refinery was costing billions of dollars. In 2018, it cost $16 billion in losses. And again, I saw Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC come out and try to say that the audited accounts were not the accounts, and to sell a narrative to the population. We had a businessman from India come to Trinidad and Tobago, seek out Trinidad and Tobago because of the efforts and the conversations that Prime Minister Rowley had in a whirlwind tour in India, their invitation to tell, as he has been doing for years, the world, we have a refinery. If you're interested, come and take a look at it. Mr. Navin Jindal came to Trinidad and Tobago. As I told you in San Fernando, Navin Jindal is part of the Jindal family. His mother is the 4th richest woman in the world. Navin Jindal is a very successful Indian businessman and a parliamentarian in India. The first thing that the UNC did was attack Mr. Jindal, attack his character and attack him and make it known to him that they did not want his business in Trinidad. Well, that cost us potentially billions of US dollars, and that was done by the UNC that is now asking you to be in government. So compare responsible government, concerned and working all the time for Trinidad with that type of behavior. But before that, again, a PNM government early in its term between 2015 and 2020 sought to ensure the economic development of Tobago, because we want Tobago to develop an economy that could earn foreign exchange, it can earn employment, and we're not looking to just put any and mom and pop's hotel there. We sought the best hotel chain in the whole Caribbean that is on the Fortune 500 listing. We asked Mr. Butch Stuart to come to Trinidad and Tobago. He came. We acquired prime land in Tobago. We went there with Mr. Butch Stuart and his son Adam Stuart for a deal that would have lifted Tobago's whole economy in a way that it is impossible for people to understand. But you only need to look at Grenada. You only need to look at St. Vincent to see how one Sandals hotel in both of those islands lifted the GDP and literally rescued those economies in times of great difficulty. We were negotiating as a responsible PNM government a Sandals and the beaches and an 18-hole golf course designed by Greg Norman. I remember going with Dr. Rowley and Adam Stuart and his designers. And I think Greg Norman came down as well. He did. Greg Norman came down and we walked on the land that had been acquired to design a Greg Norman golf course. That would have lifted the economy not only of Tobago, but of Trinidad and Tobago. So people, Trinidad and Tobago, as you get ready to make an important decision on the 28th of April, in 3 weeks' time, remind yourself who attacked the Sandals brand and attacked the Stuart family, making them say, we're sorry, but we have to protect our brand, and they left. And they left here, they went and set up a successful Sandals in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They built one in Curacao, another one in St. Lucia, when we had convinced them to allow us to jump the queue and build that. So Trinidad and Tobago, you have to decide if you want a responsible government who has the capability to negotiate good deals for Trinidad and Tobago, or you want people, their track record is to lie to you, to create lies, to steal, and worse, to do what they can to destroy Trinidad and Tobago. Because you see, any Trinidadian who tries to undermine energy deals and is writing to a US government saying, sanction Rowley and Young, and writing to a US government and telling them all manner of things about Trinidad and Tobago, and worse yet, disrespecting the president of Venezuela, whatever they may think. President Maduro is the president of Venezuela. You all would have seen President Trump sent one of his main envoys, Richard Grenell, down to Venezuela a few weeks ago to talk to President Maduro. Did you not see that? So if the President of the United States sent one of his right-hand men down to Venezuela to speak to President Maduro, they negotiated and you saw 6 Americans go back on a plane and deportees come in. Doesn't that say something to you? Look at the facts. But you have, unfortunately, a woman here, self-appointed senior counsel, attacking President Maduro. I'm sure she's doing it tonight as well, calling him a narco trafficker and all manner of things, when the government of the United States itself is engaged in conversation with Venezuela. So, you have seen the record that we have produced. It was just last night I was talking to some businessmen, because they too have to make decisions about what will happen on the 28th of April, meaning that we want them to continue investing in Trinidad and Tobago so we have jobs. I was asking them, don't take your investment and go to other places. It is safe under a PNM government to invest there so we could secure jobs along the whole East-West corridor. I was busy persuading them that under a PNM government that is going to continue in office on the 29th of April, their business is not only secure, but it will thrive. And I am proud to tell everybody tonight that after all of these types of conversations with a PNM government in the last 9.5 years, not one of them, not one of these businessmen can say that one or other of the 2 PNM prime ministers ever asked them for a red cent to work with their businesses. And you know what was the outcome of that meeting? One of them said, I have something to confess. In the past few years, I was speaking to oil and gas companies. And the oil and gas companies were saying that Rowley and Young would never be able to get Venezuelan gas deal. They would never be able to get a license from Venezuela or the clearance from the United States because it's under sanction. And that businessman told me, he said, when you returned in December 2023 with a 30-year license from the government of Venezuela for the Dragon field, he said the whole oil and gas industry was converted. And the whole oil and gas industry, which we depend on, it is that money that pays for free education. It is that money that pays for every single government job. It is that money that pays for every contract worker in every ministry, every state enterprise. That is how Trinidad and Tobago survives. That we are one of the few countries in the world you can walk into a hospital or a health center, not only get the best medical care, but get free medication. It is our oil and gas that pays for it. So citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, defend your country. Defend what is right. Prepare yourselves on the 28th of April to put the PNM back in office. I was telling my colleagues who are sitting around me tonight, that on my way here, someone sent me a photograph of another meeting taking place in Tunapuna. And sitting in the front row was one of the gentlemen that Larry Lala spoke about, Israel Khan. And you know who he was sitting next to? Jack Warner. And you know what crossed my mind? I say, I wonder if he hiring senior counsel to continue avoiding extradition. But there's a serious message in that, because these are the people who are trying to avoid the law, who are avoiding criminal prosecution in the United States. And you have to question yourself, why are they so invested in a UNC campaign? You have to question, for 10 years, the UNC is out of government. Where is the money coming from? For every ad in the newspaper as you turn, and every ad on television, and they're flooding the radio, and they're paying influencers. Where is that money coming from? And I am telling you tonight that I strongly suspect the people who are funding that campaign are people who want to stay out of jail and people who have trouble in court. This PNM government does not have that problem. You do not have to worry when you elect this PNM government that at any point in time, as any member of the cabinet is leaving Whitehall after cabinet, you have a process server coming to serve them for corruption case like Eden Gardens or EMBD, or worse yet, you have a police officer knocking on their door with a warrant to check. But if you take God out of your mind and you put those UNC people anywhere near Whitehall, that is one of the risks that you run. Let's get to the geopolitics, because you see, Trinidad and Tobago is not isolated. Are you seeing how the world is changing rapidly every single day because of measures being taken by the United States, our largest trading partner, and a country who we are friendly ally with? I want to spend a few minutes tonight explaining this tariffs thing so we could all understand how tariffs can affect each and every one of us in our lives. But the question I ask you, population of Trinidad and Tobago, is who would you prefer sitting on the table opposite these world leaders, opposite the decision makers of the oil and gas companies protecting Trinidad and Tobago? Who do you prefer? You prefer someone who is shown that he can negotiate and negotiate hard on your behalf? Someone who is always sober? Someone who they can't find anything on, so they literally have to create videos and lies about? Or you want someone who cannot even string a sentence together unless they are reading it from a piece of paper? Because this is a serious thing. Tariffs. You are seeing all across the world leaders talking about how tariffs are going to affect their economies. It is going to send the cost of goods up. You're already seeing in the United States, yesterday the chairman of their Fed, which is the equivalent of their central bank, saying that it's going to cause inflation in the United States. It's going to cause potential increases in prices. That could affect all of us, and it will. But I can tell you here today, as your Prime Minister leading a competent, intelligent cabinet, that we are prepared to do what is necessary to protect not only Trinidad and Tobago, but the whole CARICOM region. And you have proof of that. This is not a concept. This is not an imagination. You can look at the record and see it. A PNM government versus a UNC government. Credibility, reputation, stability, intelligence, but most importantly, respected. In the last 4 years, your government has gone to the difficult halls and offices in Washington, D.C., and we have established the relationships, and we have a reputation, we have credibility. And I want to say to you all tonight why I am never afraid and never deterred, because I am always fighting on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. You remember when we started in 2015, the UNC came up with a concept, Minister of Everything, and they used to attack me and insult me, they thought, by calling me the Minister of Everything. Well, tonight I want to tell you, they call me the Minister of Everything. The first visit I made to the White House in Washington, D.C., they always have a file in front of them. They pulled out the file, and you know what they said? They said, Minister Young, we're pleased to meet with you. We understand we have business to discuss. You know, we're looking at your profile that we have here, meaning in their government, which is compiled by their government. And they said, we see you are the Minister of Everything, so we know you are the person we need to talk to. And that, under the leadership of Dr. Rowley, worked for us. We met with Republicans, we met with Democrats. Dr. Rowley led CARICOM leaders to ensure that they got a meeting with President Biden at the time. We engaged with the United States government. And regardless of who's in power there, we have access to the decision makers, because they know, with this PNM government, they know that there is credibility and we have reputations that are stellar, that are good reputations. And every time we go there, it is to ensure that we continue to protect jobs, all our public servants, our electricity rates, our water rates, free hospital care, free education. That is what comes out of it. So the media asked Kamala Persad-Bissessar, who wants to be Prime Minister, what do you have to say about the tariffs imposed by President Trump? You all heard the response? Well, the media asked me about it this morning. The media said, Prime Minister Young, the leader of the opposition's response to US tariffs was that we only got tariffs put on Trinidad and Tobago because of the relationship that Rowley and Young have with President Maduro. That is her response. Go and check it. Once again, Trinidad and Tobago, a complete lie. Because I have here the tariffs that have been imposed by President Trump. We got 10%, which is the lowest tariff. That's the baseline, 10%. China, 34%. The European Union, 20%. Vietnam, 46%. Taiwan, 32%. Japan, 24%. India, 26%. South Korea, 25%. Switzerland, 31%. South Africa, 30%. Israel, 17%. Sri Lanka, 44%. And every CARICOM island or country got 10%, except for Guyana, who got 38%. So Kamala Persad-Bissessar has no problem lying and trying to mislead the population. We got the lowest. So that is how she intends to govern Trinidad and Tobago. I am putting Trinidad and Tobago on continued notice and warning. Last week, Wednesday, you saw Trinidad and Tobago, under me as Prime Minister, Minister Brown as the Foreign Minister, go to Jamaica at the invitation of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, one of the decision makers in Washington, at his invitation for Trinidad and Tobago to have a one-on-one conversation with the Secretary of State of the United States. Did you see the behavior of the UNC? just before we were going into that meeting, they had a press conference. Again, one of their frontline people, Saddam Hussein, screaming to the world that Young goes to Venezuela 13 times. He meets with Maduro, him and Rowley meeting with Maduro, etc., to try and destroy, not me, you know, Trinidad and Tobago. Well, I am happy to report to you here tonight that that meeting came about because we are respected, we have a good reputation, and everyone knows that we can negotiate on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago and on your behalf. But take God out your thoughts for a moment. Imagine Kamala Prasad Bisesa going to that meeting. Imagine Anil Roberts next to her. Imagine Munilal next to her. Imagine if you make the mistake and Jack jump on the plane to go to the United States. Imagine if some of their financiers who are avoiding extradition for 20 years go with her. Imagine if Barry Padarat goes with her. That is what you have to consider. Imagine if David Lee goes with her, and instead of them saying, well, we see that you are the minister of everything and you have a good reputation. Hold on, sir. You have $1 million bail for misbehavior in public office. Is that who Trinidad and Tobago wants representing them? We have delivered for Trinidad and Tobago. I have made that point. It is your decision to decide. But I use some examples tonight to show you how even at this stage, UNC's response is to lie, to mislead, to create intentional disharmony, and always an underlying concept of race, including with the bots that Foster spoke about. Allow me now to just remind you very briefly how they will bankrupt Trinidad and Tobago. Because I was very careful and I showed you how it would happen with this plan, the National Economic Transformation Master Plan for 2020 to 2025, where the UNC in that plan said they're going to devalue the dollar, where now we know the devaluation is 15 to 1, where now you know, or you should know, that when they devalue us at 15 to 1, every single thing goes up. Everything goes up when you go to the grocery. And you know what's their response to that? Their response to that is to create videos saying Young no go to the grocery. That is not going to help anybody here, their continued lies. They cannot refute it. You heard a short while ago, Larry Lala quote the Business Guardian of this week, Anthony Wilson, who did his own calculations and said that their plans are going to cost 20 billion, 18 billion. Let me tell you how I came up with 20. The back pay at 10% is $6 billion. The recurring cost, meaning how much it will cost every year additionally, is $1 billion. That's $7 billion. At 14%, which is what they want to offer, it is going to cost $8.5 billion in back pay, and an increase every year to us of $1.4 billion. That is $10 billion. They then said they're going to reduce corporation tax. If you do that by 5%, that's $1 billion loss. So not only are they increasing it, they're cutting how much money we make. They're going to remove VAT on all food items when you know that the crucial and critical food items already have no VAT. That could stand to lose $1.5 billion. Property tax, $125 million. You would have seen in the newspapers somebody saying, is that $20 billion cost? They cannot respond to that. So if you take God out of your thoughts, and we end up by a devaluation of 15 to 1, their response is, oh, that's an old plan. If it's an old plan, why can't you tell us what your plans are, where I can stand here tonight and tell you in one area, just off of gas, we managed to negotiate on your behalf $38 billion. $38 billion that we would not have seen on behalf of the children of Trinidad to make sure they could go to school with free education, that there's a school feeding program, to make sure CPEP workers are paid, Our URP workers are paid. The workers in the local government councils are paid to make sure doctors, nurses, policemen are paid. We have shown that not only will we increase revenue, and we can increase revenue, that we have the ability to come up with plans to do it. So let me tell you tonight, because I was waiting, like I'm sure many of you were, to hear what was the UNC's response to devaluation and to the fact that they're going to devalue. And worse yet, to the fact that they're going to take us to the IMF. And after I spoke in San Fernando, I realized that many, many young people have no clue what the IMF is. And you don't understand how that will affect you. I am putting Trinidad and Tobago on notice tonight. And young people, go home and ask those who are around in the 1980s about this. A coalition government in 1986 that contained the same elements of the UNC into something called the NAR. You all remember the NAR? The NAR stood up and promised the population no devaluation. Stood up and promised the population no one will lose their job. That same coalition government, and you have another coalition government here, devoid of the ideas to run Trinidad and Tobago, led to the devaluation of the Trinidad and Tobago dollar in April of 1988, led to an IMF program that public servants, beware, it was an immediate cut of 10%, not an addition of 10%. And I am warning you here tonight, that is right where this coalition pick-up side government of the UNC is going to send us. But if you don't believe me, listen to Kamala Prasad Bissessas. Listen to her in the newspaper today, the Saturday Express on page 5, when she was asked, how are you going to fund, how are you going to pay for the bag of poison? Listen to her. Once in government, she said, a UNC government would cut down some of the waste and expenditure to ensure their campaign promises were upheld. We'll do it by cutting out some of the waste and expenditure. A lot of money has been wasted, which you see nothing for. Sounds nice, right? But let me tell you what their track record is, because you have to look at what people do, not what they say. The UNC came in government in 2010 with an annual budget of $44 billion. By the time they left, it was $65 billion, and they were on their way to bankrupting Trinidad and Tobago. Immediately, a PNM government came in and we cut expenses. We kept the country stable. So Trinidad and Tobago, once again, I am warning all. The UNC is going to send us to the IMF. It is going to mean loss of free education, loss of free health care. You can't pay for CDAP anymore. Our public servants, the first ones to lose their job would be the contract workers, CPEP, URP, and the contract workers in all of the state entities. That is their plan. She has no plan. I just want to spend a few minutes tonight so you could compare crime. Crime is a very, very big issue for us in Trinidad and Tobago. Crime is something that bothers every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago. You have a government that is not in bed with the criminals. You have a government who is working to address the issues of crime. Let me tell you some of my plans and the vision for how we intend to address these areas of crime, having built on the last 9.5 years of experience. We will appoint, as Prime Minister, I will appoint a National Security Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister. We're going to establish and strengthen an elite unit, and elite units in the police service, where we're going to make sure they have advanced tactical training, intelligence-led operations, legislate protection for undercover officers, provide them with state-of-the-art equipment and rapid response capability, a dedicated multi-agency task force. We're also going to use advanced forensic science and digital evidence management. We're going to expand the cybercrime task force. We're going to have a rapid response joint task force. We are immediately going to change the law for the appointment of a commissioner of police, because one of the difficulties we faced is not having strategic and stable leadership. That is the first thing we will do as a government. We're going to bolster Foster Cummings' ministry and provide for the youth. There are many items that I'm going to speak to you about and that you will see in our manifesto as we launch it to deal with crime. I would like to wrap up at this stage because we have a speaker who is going to come to speak to us and give us some important messages. But once again, I have sat with certain ministers and had conversations. And before I leave the stage this evening, I want to tell you what the next PNM government will do for our youth. Because we continue to be concerned about our youth, and in particular students. Our world has changed. Today's world requires more access to the internet. We are concerned that our young citizens in school and our students need access to the internet to navigate this world. We are concerned that some who may not be able to afford it are going to be left behind. So today, I have consulted with our Minister of Digital Transformation, and we will be communicating with both TSTT and Digicel to immediately reduce the cost of access to data for young citizens and to give them more access to data. Trinidad and Tobago is not going to let our young people be left behind. They are going to get cheaper and more access to data. Our public healthcare system, we have free healthcare. We've been investing in digitizing and making sure that your records are there to make it more efficient. And Minister Diyal Singh will talk to that. But after consulting with Minister Diyal Singh today and asking him to get more information, the next PNM government, having consideration and concern in particular about our senior citizens, we are going to expand the availability and use of virtual doctor consultations for senior citizens who want to use it, so they don't have to go and sit down waiting in a healthcare center. Because you see, that is how you do it responsibly. You don't say you're going to send doctors to everybody's house. The cost of that, if one doctor could go to 3 different houses in a day, and we introduce for senior citizens who want it, rather than they have to leave their home early in the morning to go and line up and sit down in a healthcare center to wait for hours for a 5-minute consultation. We are going to expand that you can have virtual consultations with your doctor. They have all the records there. They ask you how you're going, and if necessary, you then can go and pick up the drugs or send somebody to pick it up. And that is how a responsible government cares for you. We have a choice to make. It is an easy choice to make. You have seen a responsible PNM government fight for you, negotiate for you, stabilize the country. So on the 28th of April, join Foster Cummings, join Esmond Ford, join Nyan Gatsby Dolly, join Sanjeev Boodoo, join Kareem Marcel, join Terry Diyal Singh, join Hans Devine, and join Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, and join me, and let us all say, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we have prevailed. Thank you.